Goo Lagoon, the perfect place to visit on a hot summer's day, but the worst place to visit for those who can't swim. It requires 10 spatulas to get in, which you should absolutely have by now, so hop on in when you're good to go.
Goo Lagoon, a sun-drenched beach of sludge at the bottom of the sea. But all is not well here on Paradise.
This is the level where a lot of the changes that Rehydrated made to the game will start to show its face. I mean, mechanically speaking. Graphically is an obvious one, but some of the little things that make Spongebob work mechanically, especially when we get to some of the later zones, you're gonna really notice just how different it really is from the original. It might seem similar on surface level, but trust me, it's not. But we've got a new enemy. This guy is called Monsoon. He presses a magic button and it makes a thundercloud appear from him that will then strike you down. A nice attention to detail that they added in Rehydrated is that the thunderclouds will actually have a little icon directly underneath them, so you can see where they're aiming now. In the original, you kind of had to use your depth perception to work out where they were. But they're easy enough to destroy. What also helps is that the moment they're destroyed, the clouds vanish, which also kind of applies to the original, but if they're still forming, there's a chance that they will strike you after the enemy's dead, which is kind of sucked in the original, but it's a nice quality of life feature that they've altered now.
Yeah, a big robot stole everybody's sunscreen.
Oh no! Everyone will burn, and then they'll get all itchy and peel.
Exactly! You can't spend a day at the beach without sunscreen. That sun is way too hot. That robot is out on the island. Nobody can get to him. Spongebob, maybe you can use those sun reflectors to point the sun's rays on that robot. If you hit one of the buttons on the side of a lifeguard tower, the reflector will turn. Connect all the towers and the light will shoot right out of the big reflector on the island. Then all you have to do is swim out to the island and turn the big reflector onto the robot. I'll stay here and protect the babes.
But I, can't swim.
Yeah, that's right. For the third main level of the game, we finally have a starting objective that isn't a collectathon. In Jellyfish Fields, it was go get the jelly. In Downtown, it was go get the wheels. And now in this one, it's just find a way to kill that robot, will ya? What you're doing is that around the lifeguard towers there are these giant mirrors. If you hit them, the mirrors will turn. If you get all the mirrors positioned to go out to the ocean, you just need to go out there to that last one at some point to hit it. Which is SpongeBob said, but we can't swim. So how are we supposed to get over there? Well, that's where it kind of works its magic. The lights will remain in their position even if you leave the zone. They will remain in place for the rest of time, essentially. So you can just hit them all, and then much later on in the level, we'll eventually get the ability to get over there. And we will then go back and get it. So do the puzzle now as far as you can, and then we'll finish it off when we get to the other side. This dude here is supposed to be there so you can get across, but the water is ever so slightly lowered than it was in the original game. So the gap isn't as big, so you can kind of just jump it without him there. Also worth mentioning, there used to be a bus stop around here that isn't here anymore. They just got rid of it, and I don't understand why. Genuinely don't see the reason why they would have got rid of the bus stop that's here. So you have to go to the one that's much further away instead. And the reason why I challenge this is because there's a sock here that's only achievable with Patrick. So hopping on the bus that was here allowed us to get it without having to backtrack, but now we have to. You can actually already see the template of what we'll be doing, because on top of all of these lifeguard towers there is a fruit and a button to throw them at. But there isn't a bus stop here. We have to go away and come back later, which you didn't have to do in the original, and it's just odd. But coming over here, Mrs. Puff will be waiting for you to give you your numbered based objective of this mission. You know, which is kind of interesting, because Mrs. Puff gives you the numbered based objectives more than anyone else. She gives you it in Downtown, she gives you it here, later when we go to Rock Bottom she gives you another one, and when we go to Kelp Forest she gives you another one. But the way it works is that you're busting the bubbles to free the kids. In the original you had to actually hit the balloons, yeah, not the bubble, the balloons. If you hit the kid just bounced, like it didn't actually do anything. But in this they've heavily simplified it, that as long as you make contact after hitting the triangle button, or whatever your top button is, you will get it. Which, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, it's this middle ground between, I like the fact that they made it made it a little easier for kids, but at the same time I never had trouble when I was a kid. Like, I think that's the thing that always makes me kind of hesitant when they make old games easier in remasters or remakes. It's like, well, I played this game. Keep in mind, this game came out in 2003. I was born in 99. I was 4 years old when I played this, and I managed to beat it. This game is not challenging. If I can do it, why has it now been made easier? If I could do it when I was a goddamn toddler, I like just started Reception and I managed to get it done, what's everyone else's excuse? It feels like there has to be a line somewhere. Like, there's a limit between making it easier and more accessible to just pandering and treating people like idiots. And like, that is kind of an example of what I mean, where it's like, in the original you had to hit the balloon. If you hit the kid just kind of jolted and kind of looked at you like, what the fuck are you doing? And it's just like, I don't know, like, it just feels like there has to be a line somewhere. Like, you can't just tone it down and assume that everyone's idiots, because eventually it gets insulting and it makes people not interested. Or if they don't feel insulted by it, they might just get bored because nothing's challenging them. Classic example, at least for me, going from Shin Megami Tensei to Persona. You go into Persona 4 or 5 and you're like, hang on a minute, you just kind of steamroll every dungeon that comes your way without much thought. Like, you don't have to try hard to get really strong in that. And I know that's more so that SMT is just on a whole other level of difficulty, but I still kind of felt that. But I still felt that challenge effectively done in Persona 2 and 3. I hesitate to say Persona 1 because Persona 1's, as much as I like it, it's kind of a mess. I kind of just talked over that whole challenge, whoops. Anyway, I'm going to cut back to get that sock. Yeah, this will probably be good enough. Yeah, I'm back. What I mean, like, by this sock here, is that originally there was a bus stop here that you could use to get access to this now, and you could get this done before you go over to see Mrs. Puff. But now that's not an option, so you have to just come do it later. You have to come back for it, which is just, I don't know. It just seems like an odd decision. There's another bus stop later on that's the same deal, and it's like there used to be one there and now there isn't, so you have to backtrack for it, and it just seems odd. Like, there's a lot of moments on my first playthrough where I was like, am I just misremembering, or did they actually get rid of something here? And it's just, it threw me off. Like, if the PS5 ends up being completely backwards compatible, like the rumors suggest, I might end up just let's playing the original just so I can show you the differences. Because the original is still absolutely perfectly fine in its own regard. It's probably one of my favourite things about this, is that this Rehydrated doesn't replace the original at all. Back to the bus stop though, I'll swap back to Spongebob to do this section here. I say that you can kind of keep as Patrick, it's just there's an objective coming up that they want you to be Spongebob for, even though, I'm going to level with you now, doesn't make much sense to do as Spongebob. Because there's an optional collectible that's only available as Patrick there, and the rest of the entire challenge can also be done as Patrick, so you might as well use Pat. Like, I don't know, but they want you to use SpongeBob because, like, if you go up to the challenge giver as Patrick, they'll just be they'll just be like, hi, can you find SpongeBob? Like, they pretty much try and tell you get SpongeBob to get the full objective. But it feels kind of pointless. Anyway, let's go rescue these kids. Oh, well. I died in the process, but it was worth it. Let's go talk to Mrs. Puff.
My hero.
And get our golden spatula. But that's your numbered base collectible of this mission. Rescuing the kids.
As a reward.
Wait, actually, hang on. There's in Kelp Forest, when we get to there, her objective there is also rescue the kids. I'm starting to think Mrs. Puff shouldn't be allowed to look after kids. Break you and go over towards this giant sandcastle over here. So there's a bus stop over there as well, and that one you absolutely should be using. But I'm going to quickly go nab this over here as SpongeBob, just because I have an easier time. You can do it with Pat as well, but you might as well since it's right here. Just be quick about it, because that Thunder Tiki's going to break your platform up. And up here is your sock. So sometimes the Tikis are mandatory to try and get some socks. Keep that in mind, because the ones that people tend to miss the most are the ones where they just think, oh, that's an odd line of Tikis, break, and then not actually look where they go. But Bubble Buddy here will only tell you the fall of this objective to SpongeBob. If you come as Patrick, he'll just be like, hi, and that'll be it. So like I said, that's what I mean. They expect you to do it as Sponge.
The golden spatula?
So go over here and get the dialogue if SpongeBob if you want.
That should be easy to reach.
Well, perhaps you should see for yourself.
But then turn around and go get Patrick, because it'll just be saving time later on. And it even makes the objective easier, in my opinion, so you might as well go as Patrick. Because there's an ice box that will be able to throw into the water to freeze it, to make it so you can travel across most of the challenge with no trouble. But when you whack this button, the door will close behind you, and water will start flowing in, slowly rising. If you're playing as SpongeBob at this section, he has a unique line where he goes, "Water rising must get to higher ground." Like voice cracks and everything. But if you get up here, which is pretty quick to do, you don't even have to go the full way round. Ow. Go the full way round. Wait for the water to kind of stop around here, and then freeze the ice. There you go. And you can go nab this sock and skip the rest of the challenge while you're here, all the way over to here. And there you go. If you're doing it as SpongeBob, you have to go around. It's just, and you don't even get the sock. So you might as well do it that way. Like, I've never not done it that way. Ooh, be careful. Just be wary of the monsoon bots, because you're supposed to destroy them with the bash, and, well, Patrick doesn't have the bash. So you have to kind of just hope they're low enough that you can double jump and whack them. Which, keep in mind, in the original, you couldn't attack in the air as Patrick. So you had to just kind of run away from them, which is the only bit where you can kind of see why they wanted you to use SpongeBob. Because there are some enemies in the game that are very clearly designed to only be dealt with SpongeBob. But that's the whole challenge. Get up here, get your golden spatula. There's still one more sock to collect on the sandcastles. We'll be getting that in a second. And I also want to bring attention to all those tikis on the bridge in front of us. When you're grinding for shinies late game to try and get them for Mr. Krabs, break these on the bridge. Like, actually just whack them and take the damage. Use the cruise bubble, aim it straight up to the top of this peak tower. Because there's another long, huge collection of tikis. Break these, and then as they're broken, dive into the goo. And it'll kill you because the drop's too big for it to reset you up here. When you reset, you'll have your health back anyway, and you can rinse and repeat.
Hey, Gary.
The challenge in the cave also expects you to be done as SpongeBob, but there's two socks in here. One of them they expect you to get as Patrick, one of them they expect you to backtrack for. I mentioned it before, but this is the section I was on about where I said through Rehydrated's excuse me, rearrangement of its mechanics, you can get both of these socks without having to backtrack or get Patrick. And I find that kind of brilliant. I actually genuinely really like the changes. You can completely skip this challenge if your jumping is decent enough. Just be wary that drop shadows are kind of weird in Rehydrated. They're not bad, they're just weird. Like, I've seen better, but I've seen worse. Down here is a sock, so make sure to nab that. That's not the sock I was on about that you have to backtrack for. This is, but now, momentum! The momentum engine in this game allows you to completely just jolt over here and make the jump. I love that. The momentum in the original never let you do that, but look, if you just jump off the edge, as it moves, it will fling you. I jumped a little late that time, but I get it more often than not, but seriously, I love that. You can proper fling yourself in this game, which you couldn't do in the original. Also, if you go right on the edge of this, you can actually hit this ledge, which you couldn't in the original. You had to jump down to the water, because you're supposed to go along there to get that sock. You're supposed to go over here, then jump backwards across all these floating tikis, through the explosive ones, destroy the enemies, and then get the sock at the end. I'll show you what I mean, just because while I'm here anyway. The camera's clipping with the ceiling. I'd appreciate if it fucking stopped. There we go. And you just get over here, break these, and then go around and get the sock. But now because of the momentum, you don't need to do that at all. See? So that's just a huge, nice skip that speeds up everything. There's still one more sock here that they expect you to get as Patrick, but like I said, we're going to get it as SpongeBob because you can in this. And I adore that. You just can. Make sure to whack that while you're here, so it'll drop these. And it'll also drop one a little... No, it doesn't. I'm thinking of another one. Ignore me then. There's one later on that you hit that drops one, but then drops another one elsewhere. We've got to wait for the water to lower. The water raising and lowering... Fucking... Alright. The water raising and lowering was a lot more subtle in the original, so you could be forgiven for not straight away noticing it. Whilst in this, it's very defined. Like, it doesn't slowly rise and lower. It sits still and then just sharply goes up. It sits still, then sharply goes down. So it's more visually noticeable. This is the one I was on about, where you drop these two, but it also drops another one off to the side. See? So you can now reach it and go around. The slot they expect you to get as Patrick is to our immediate right, but we can get it as Spongebob right now through some choice platforming. I'll show you.
Boy, Patrick will be glad to have this back.
There you are. I had to shut up for a second to make sure I got it. But yeah, that's exactly what I mean. So all the socks are got, and we don't need Patrick at all for this section anymore. You don't need to backtrack to the bus stop. You don't need to get the iced tea key. You can keep it going in one flow motion.
I love opening presents.
And we can move on to the pier. Make sure to open that box, because if you don't open it, it's just going to be a pain later on.
SpongeBob, help me.
Oh right, I need Patrick for this, right?
I have a task that I think he can help me with.
Let's get Patrick. To be fair, he's right. This one you do kind of want Patrick for. This is kind of Patrick's level for the most part.
Sorry, but the carnival is closed. A pesky robot has taken over me ticket booth. And worse, me money. If you help me get rid of that no-good robot, I'll give you a big reward.
That's not the only objective you need to do to get the golden spatula. When you break this, if you go back to Mr. Krabs, you'll be like, that wasn't quite what I intended. Let me give you something else to do that might not cause as much damage. But if you slam this G-Love, you can throw it. They expect you to throw the fruit, but for the sake of this is like the last time you get a reason to throw an enemy in the whole game, I'd like to do that. That plays later. That music tune plays later in the original. As soon as it hit the ground, the wheel started spinning and the music started playing. But if you go back and talk to Mr. Krabs, you'll be like, okay.
Not
See?
exactly what I had in mind. I hope my insurance covers all this. Why don't
You
try
insurance? What,
something
you
this
own the
is-
pier, Mr. Krabs?
I mean, dangerous. I need
Why
them
would
ready
your
to
insurance be
clear
at
out
any
the
risk?
motorboats. When you've destroyed them all, come back and see me.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he gives us the alternate objective of kill all the enemies that are by the bumper boats, which we'll get to later on. Because the pier, well, other than being extremely dangerous and somewhere that you wouldn't send anyone right now, is actually a relatively wide area, so it will take us a little to get round to it. But it's also the last section of Goo Lagoon.
Robot go boo.
And this is also the very first level that you could 100% in one visit. Because downtown we need the cruise bubble for, and Jellyfish Fields we need both the cruise bubble and the bubble bowl. Yeah, I had a tongue twist there for a second. This is the first one that you'll be able to get every single spatula and every single sock on one visit. We won't have to come back here afterwards. Which, to be honest, like if they ever do a direct sequel, I don't know. I kind of want them to make it so you have to come back more often. But what I'd rather them do instead is, like, say it's a challenge that requires you to get the cruise bubble, something that you would get at the end of whatever new second boss they made in the next game. Also, I'll show this off. This is an old trick while I'm here. The ski ball abuse that you can't really do in the remake anymore. If you took this stone tiki, you could throw it across all this to the ski ball machine over here, which is technically the only thing you can't do right now, but it's really of little merit. I'll see if I can squeeze it into the recording to show off at some point. But from here, you could then throw it onto this ledge, but now Patrick throws it far lower, so you can't. You get stopped right there, which I think is kind of cheeky. But yeah, I'll show that off in a bonus video, because we haven't got it right now. But anyway, what I was saying, if they ever do a direct sequel to Battle for Bikini Bottom, I'd love for them to make it so there's actually a whole chunk of a level you can't access. Like, say there's like Goo Lagoon, it's 3 zones per se. You've got the beach, you've got the caves, and you've got the pier. If in a sequel they made it so the equivalent of the pier couldn't be accessed until you hit a secret switch in the cave that could only be reached through the cruise bubble. So there was actually, not only were you just coming back for new objectives, you were coming back to actually get new things out of old levels. Or something like that. I'd love to see that kind of idea go into it, because then it gives you more reason on a casual sense. Even if you've no intention of 100%ing the game, it'd still give you a reason to come back in a more casual sense. Also, you can do this in the original, and you can do this here too. You can just jump this. You don't need to go around at all. You can just jump up here and grab that. In the original, it was a slightly different object, but you could still just do it. You can just get up there with no real hassle. You're supposed to take this all the way around and then jump off to it, but now you're only doing this slide if you're going for the extra shinies, which I might as well since I'm here. Because there's a purple right at the end over here, sitting on top of 4 floaters. I don't even think I got the purple from that. No, I didn't. Oh well. I'm not losing sleep over it. If this fruit, you can knock the button with it, but we won't be dealing with the bumper boats right this second, because there's another bus stop here. And you might have seen that we spent 2,200 shinies to open up a trampoline that led up to the top of a small tower. Yes, that's another bungee. And thankfully, like I said, downtown's the only time where it really shows how hideously inferior the bungee mechanics are in this game compared to the original, because the rest of them are just straight drops, so you don't really have to move. You just need to hit the bungee. So just hit this, take it down, and back up, and don't mess around any longer. Don't bother. You don't need to hit anything else. I hope there is a direct patch that tries to alter that. This spring here is literally just to slowly lower you back down to where you were. Like, I show it off because it's something to show off, but if I ever do the other version, the original Battle for Bikini Bottom, I guarantee you I won't touch it. It might throw me off when I go back to the original at some point, because there are a few mechanical differences that I know I'm going to get muddled with. But as a whole, it'll probably be a pretty smooth experience. Ow. Also, something that is kind of odd, they just use the frozen water look for the bumper boats here, which they didn't do in the original. They actually had a different aesthetic for it. If you duck underneath the pier right here, there's another icebox that you can throw, which is the last spatula, and the only one I missed on my blind playthrough back when I was like 4 or 5 years old. This was the only one I didn't get, and I had to come back to much later on. It's an odd thing for me to remember, I know, but it is just what it is. Also, if you're like really on the ball, you can just barely make the full journey in one, which I don't think you could really do in the original, but because of Patrick getting a little extra movement through his jolts through the attack, you can just barely make it there and make it back in one go. You don't have to stop in the middle. So just spam the hell out of the attack button as you go. If you can find any way to move even quicker, but like timing your jumps to get more attack presses, like trying to cancel out the animation sooner, then go for it. But you see, we can just barely, hopefully, make it. It's close, but yeah, we can make it. Popping up back up here, we still need to turn in the fact we destroyed all the robots to Patrick, to Mr. Krabs even, to get that one done.
Your reward.
And y'all. But there's still one more golden spatula we're missing. We need to circle back round to that start, don't we, to get those light towers to destroy the robot for Larry. Well, now we can actually kind of do that. Because down over here, if you take this watermelon and throw it at the seesaw, we can launch yourself back over to the start, but from a different position. See? We can be right here where the last tower is. Also, when you get here, something that's new to this one is that they put 2 springs in place for you to get there and back easier. The spring that appeared on this side was always here, but the spring that appeared on that side to take you back here never appeared. If you took the spring, you had to go back around if you wanted to get back here easily. But turn this on, it'll break the robot, and we've done the objective. So now we can just need to turn it into Larry and we're done. And it'll probably be a good part to stop the video, because next time we'll be taking on the first boss of the game, and I kind of want that to be at least at the start of its own video. They're not long, the boss fights, but I still kind of want it to be the start of its own video. So, next time on SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, we're going to take on the first boss, the major boss of the game. But until then, you guys take care now. Also, we did indeed get everything.